I'm calling this meeting to order. This is an open meeting of the Broadcasting Board of Governors. The meeting is being held at BBG headquarters in Washington. It's being streamed live over the internet. You can replay it whenever you want on bbg.gov. On the phone with us are Dana Perino and Michael Meehan. We also have at least 5 governors here, too, which constitutes a quorum. Sorry? At least 5. First, there's a board vote on the adoption of the minutes of the November 18th meeting in tab 7. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I second the...
Thank you very much. Victor? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It carries. In December, we adopted the 2012 BBG meeting schedule. It was done by a notation vote, just in case people want to see it done live on the internet. Do I have a motion to? Yes, Victor.
No, I was going to move.
Moved by Victor, seconded by Susan.
And I might point out, Mr. Chairman, just...
Wait, all in favor, please say
well, no,
aye.
I was going to say,
Okay.
on the calendar is, we'll be going to Miami for the Office of Cuba Broadcasting in April instead of what has previously in the past been March.
Okay.
I was just, for those who like to follow, all 4 people who follow our activities on that.
The committee assignments? Yeah. All right, and we also, since we do have a quorum, we can vote on the new committee assignments. The committee assignments are pretty similar to what they were before, but do we have those?
Where are they?
The addition of Susan McHugh to the governance.
It's all the same except for the addition of Susan McHugh to the governance committee. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Congratulations, Susan.
Yeah, lucky you, Susan.
Some people win trips to Disney World. Others get appointed to the governance committee.
It's all due to Dennis.
I always think the old question I got asked when I put people on the K-Trans board as mayor of Knoxville, what had they done to irritate me? And the question is, what has anyone done to irritate?
Yeah, we
Yes,
went out
right.
to dinner and I said, I could
I'm being facetious
I
for
know
our
you
viewing
are.
audience. I don't mean it that way.
All right, now we have the real serious part of this agenda. I want to say that yesterday we had a day-long meeting after the most open and transparent process I can possibly imagine that lasted for a couple of years on creating a strategy for international broadcasting. I think they're trying to fix that.
Thank you. Yeah. That's a ping pong ball in my head.
Are you fixing that noise? Yeah. We spent all of yesterday having what was a very serious and substantive conversation. If I may speak personally, I came into that meeting feeling one way, which is that we should focus on the grand consolidation of everything first. And after hearing everybody else's discussion, I've changed my mind and gone to what will be what we voted on informally and had a complete consensus on yesterday. I want to read it clearly because I think it is probably the most important thing we've done in 2.5 years since we've been at the BBG. The board adopted in October a strategy that noted the complexity of the BBG's structure. At a time of budget tightening and cutting money and stuff, it was inconceivable that we would keep a management and complex structure for the BBG that complicated managing the resources, to some extent, in my mind, wasted resources, and prevented us from maximizing our core talents and capabilities, that being the core talent of journalism conducted in the field in pursuit of our mission. I believe the board is now ready to take action to strengthen the U.S. international broadcasting. We plan to do so in part by freeing up resources that are now locked in inefficient and duplicative administrative structures. We will reinvest that money in programming. toward that end, based on yesterday's meeting, we are all proposing, as a consensus, 2 proposals, one directed towards our grantee and one directed towards the agency as a whole. They will be considered as a package, as per agreement of what we did yesterday, because this is not really 2 separate approaches, but 2 prongs of a single approach that aims for the streamlining and consolidation of international broadcasting the way any other company would be and any other country does it, which is one great organization focused on journalism with many entities and many brand names and many divisions, but still unified and cohesive as one great organization. The first element of this package is grantee consolidation. After the year-long strategic review, we agreed at an open meeting, voted on, and discussed last fall, exploring the feasibility of consolidation of the 3 grantee organizations, those being Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, plus Radio Free Asia, plus MBN, into a single organization with shared services, while each one retains their journalistic missions and the successful branding and audiences they have come to know. The board engaged the services of a management consultant through an open process of selecting a management consultant. That management consultant was Deloitte. And we took on external legal counsel with Baker and McKinsey in order to get a detailed understanding of the potential costs, benefits, and major issues involved in the consolidation of the grantees. Deloitte reported to the board that there is a, quote, compelling, unquote, case for undertaking the consolidation of the grantees, and they projected substantial savings for the BBG during the 5 years following a consolidation of the grantees and, of course, thereafter. These are real funds, considerable funds, that can be used to enhance the journalism and on-the-ground mission of international broadcasting. Let me pause for a minute to make sure this is working and streaming on the Internet. Is it? Yeah. Well, has this all been working?
Steve, is it working? Is it streaming on the Internet? You know?
All right.
That's the question.
All right. Our legal counsels, well, now this is off, which is why I'll speak loudly. The legal counsel studied the feasibility of merging the grantees and confirmed that we can do so. It will be into one consolidated grantee, subject to congressional notification and consultation. After we did this yesterday afternoon, the president was so excited that he announced this morning, in order to preempt us, that he's doing this for other agencies, including Trade and Commerce. I say that jokingly, of course, but what it was is it does show, and we have been in touch with the various people at OMB and others who are trying to streamline and reinvent government in all agencies and all places to eliminate duplication. So we're part of a larger process that I think most taxpayers would approve of. Based on the logic of our strategy, the briefings that we have received to date, and our very open and transparent discussions of this topic, I recommend the adoption of the following decisions. Number one, regarding grantee consolidation. Number one, the board announces its intention to issue the 3 grants, which BBG currently makes separately to Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, to Radio Free Asia, and to the Middle East Broadcasting Network, to a single consolidated grantee. Once that grantee is created, subject to administration approval, congressional consultation and guidance, and other due diligence in the implementation of a consolidated transaction plan approved by the board. Number 2, the board instructs the IBB director, that being Mr. Dick Lobo to my right, working with Governor Mulhall, to develop a plan for structuring, documenting, and implementing a grantee consolidation transaction, including the conduct of adequate due diligence, and secure the services of legal and other experts who may be required to assist in this transaction. The IBB director is requested to provide such a plan and a proposed budget for its implementation for consideration at our March 2012 meeting, or come back to us if there's some delay there. The IBB director is authorized and encouraged to work in close cooperation with the grantees. The board has authorized the IBB director to work with Brian Conniff, the president of NBN, who will act as a project leader for the consolidation and preparing the requested plan. The board directs and encourages all elements of USIB to cooperate fully with the IBB director in facilitating the timely and accurate completion of the requested plan and budget. Finally, number 4, the board also directs the IBB director, as soon as practicable, to prepare and transmit any congressional notification that may be required to implement the board's intentions as stated in this decision. We want to move these separately? Or no?
As a package.
Can we move it as a package, Paul? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. There's,
Is it one resolution or?
well, that's what I'm saying. I think it should be, because I want it to be a two-headed strategy, but I had to...
No, I have no objection to being.
Yeah, I had it
I'm
slightly
not
differently in my
asking-
notes, but I actually think these are joint strategies as we decided yesterday.
I'm not asking for a division of the question.
Well, yeah, you're asking for consolidation, which I am now about to do.
I support that.
In addition to focusing on our grantees, there's a strong sense among board members that we should develop and pursue legislation in order to find an optimal structure for U.S. international broadcasting going forward. Let me pause to explain for a second. We were faced with 2 options, or 3 or 4 options yesterday. One was consolidating the grantees and eliminating some back office and other redundancies, extra costs, whatever, streamlining them and making it so that they were one cohesive organization. Another option was to try to consolidate and rationalize all of U.S. international broadcasting, which has been jerry-rigged for about 70 years with different things being added on. We really decided that those should be pursued jointly in tandem so that at the end of this process, we would have one very clean, coherent structure in which U.S. international broadcasting would run more like a normal organization instead of having many different power centers that sometimes cause redundancies, extra costs, and extra tension. On behalf of that, and with Susan helping us naming it, we are proposing the International Broadcasting Innovation Act of 2012, and we will work with Congress, and have already talked to people in Congress about how that would work. The board understands, and it was reflected in our strategic plan and been discussed for the past 2 years in the development of that plan, that it's important to restructure U.S. international broadcasting to streamline, consistent with this broader strategic plan. I propose to the board that we consider and developing and pursuing legislation to achieve this purpose. I would like to propose that the board consider and adopt the following legislative proposal that we will be making. The board directs the IBB director to work with IBB staff and outside experts and with Governor McHugh in order to develop a draft International Broadcasting Innovation Act for the board's further consideration. That draft legislation should have the following attributes. The organization of U.S. international broadcasting shall reflect the optimal mix of federal and non-federal assets required to best achieve the successful and efficient implementation of the board's strategic plan. And let me pause for a second just to translate. I've heard people throwing about federalization, defederalization, whatever. There's no preconception in this plan, and we're going to have people talk about what the best hybrid organization, which we now have, is a hybrid, what the best hybrid looks like and how that would work, and we'll have consultants on looking at that. Number 2, the position of the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of U.S. International Broadcasting, will report to the Broadcasting Board of Governors. That position will be created of a CEO. That CEO will be empowered to provide the day-to-day executive leadership for U.S. international broadcasting and should have management authority over the federal and non-federal elements of U.S. international broadcasting, subject to board oversight. The IBB director is instructed to consult with Governors Ashe and Linton in developing a model to defining the appropriate roles for the board and for the CEO. 3, we will recommend that the position of the IBB director as a presidentially appointed and Senate-confirmed appointment should be eliminated and should be replaced by an appropriate official who will be selected by and report to the CEO. Also, the domestic dissemination ban in Smith-Mundt we recommend should be repealed, and the BBG would be named to reflect the planned unified structure for U.S. international broadcasting. Do I have I make that motion, if I may, and I might even offer Enders the honor of doing the second because it was his 2-year strategy planning that got us to this point. Enders?
Second.
All right. I now open it up for discussion and comments.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say with respect to one element of this.
I think you have to speak loudly. I think somehow with all of the talents of international broadcasting, we can't broadcast ourselves in this room.
I'd like to say with respect to one element of this plan, which is one of the ones you mentioned at the end, the elimination of the position of the IBB director as a presidentially appointed and Senate-confirmed position. I just want to make it clear, and I think on behalf of the whole board, that has absolutely nothing to do with the job that Dick Lobo has done in this position.
In fact,
he's done a spectacular job, and I just want to make sure that that's recognized in this, and there's no misconception that there's any other motive for that, because Dick has done. Dick and the entire staff, in my view, have done a tremendous job.
Boy, that's an important point to make. It didn't occur to me that could be misconstrued, but in case it could be, let us note also that in helping to create this new role of CEO of international broadcasting, we've let you be the guinea pig, and delegated much of our day-to-day authority when we're not sitting as a board to you, and you've helped pave the way for what this position could be. Dick?
And that I've helped make the proposal to eliminate the position.
That's right.
Talk about reinventing government.
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly. I would also like to say that this plan was prepared by the board over a 2-year open process. But I want to commend Jeff Trimble, Bruce Sherman, Paul Comer Dorsey, and anybody else I should commend around this table. I know that in some ways people don't realize that you're following a very clear strategic direction of the board. Sometimes people think you have your own agendas. I would like to attest to the fact that you don't. You've been giving us great advice, and the board has, in all of its strategy and all of its budgeting decisions, given, I hope, clear guidance to you, and I want to thank the really, really good service all of you have done and the loyalty that you've exhibited in doing that service. Further comments on this important issue?
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to thank you, my fellow board members, and also all of the staff for getting us to this point. Director Lobo just pointed out that this is an historic time, really, for international broadcasting, and I think it's an exciting time. So I'm looking forward to moving forward with everyone. And the only comment I want to make is that we're not going to do this in isolation. This is going to be a partnership and a team effort going forward as we actually draft the legislation. So we'll innovate our way forward, and like I said, it's exciting and historic. So thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chairman, and I'm not sure, is this being picked up? Or?
Yeah, yes. But we don't have the internal mic on.
First of all, I think it's helpful, particularly for those who are watching by webcam, to know that the members here today, plus Mr. Governor Meehan, who is not here but was here for part of the meeting yesterday, discuss this.
And Michael and Dana are on the phone, so you can.
Michael Meehan and Dana Perino are also on the phone participating. We're involved in this, and I think it's important to have a little bit of discussion, not necessarily for the benefit of board members because they know it all in terms of what we went through. Know it all from what we went through yesterday, but for the public at large because we are a publicly funded agency that responds to the the people of America, and we're all appointed by the President, confirmed by the United States Senate. As to why we're moving, and I can only speak for myself, as to why I voted for this and support it, but also put a caveat down that the devil's in the details in terms of where we are. But today is a first step, hopefully the first of several successful steps along a journey. I am not persuaded to be for this because of the monetary savings. The monetary savings, in my view, to be honest, are modest. Now, 8 to 12 million is a lot of money by Knoxville, Tennessee standards, but out of a budget of $730 million, it's much more modest. But let me say, whatever savings, be it 100,000 or 2 million, are worth doing if you can do them and if they make sense, and waste, it should not occur in duplication or whatever, regardless of the amount of money involved. But that's not a motivating factor, it's just an auxiliary. I'm not necessarily motivated by the Deloitte study. I found it interesting and helpful, but not totally persuasive as to why I personally am voting for it. I'm personally voting for it because I think it just, in the bottom line, makes sense. And I didn't need a study or anything else to tell me that. In fact, there will be one-time expenditures which almost equal the first year's savings in terms of consolidation, if in fact you go forward with this. And that's something everyone should know. And this isn't an effort to rift or reduce number of employees. It's an effort to improve the quality of service and the delivery of service to nations which experience censorship and have totalitarian regimes, and whose mission in life is to deny the people of their nations accurate and objective information, whatever it may be. That's why BBG exists. And while the brand name BBG isn't nearly as well known as Voice of America and Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia, it's there. And we are the group established by Congress that has to move in this direction. I think consolidation done properly will be a good step forward in terms of the new era that we live in terms of media transmission, and the dramatic changes that are occurring almost monthly. I mean, we all know our personal computer's out of date a year after we bought it, maybe before, and the same thing's happening in media communication, whether it be Twitter or Facebook or social media or whatever. And I always look to my 21-year-old son to tell me what's going on, because I'm always challenged in this area. But I do. The one constant is change. I think it's also important to recognize that the caveat will come in the details. And I think, just to put our cards on the table, the 9 members of this board will have different thoughts as to how the structure ought to be created. And I don't think any one of the 9 members will be successful in getting 100% of what they want if each one were drafting it. I hope what will occur is that there will be a consensus among the 9 members, where if you can get 70 or 80% of what you think's there, and you don't think the 20% that perhaps wouldn't have been your first choice is so objectionable that then puts you off the reservation, that you could arrive. Now, I realize in some quarters compromise is not a popular word, but I think we proved yesterday compromise can work, and I think hopefully, and this is going to be a month-to-month in some detailed process by which the board members will need to give and take. And Governor Linton and I will certainly work on some draft languages. Governor McHugh has forgotten more about the Hill than what most of us know in terms of congressional relations, because she is a product of Hill staffs and knowing the ins and outs of the Senate in particular. I think, but again, we could come up with a plan which, in my view, could be so bad that I'd no longer vote for what I'm voting for today, or it can be so good that I would try to jumpstart somebody on getting there first to make the motion. And the truth may lie somewhere in between. But I hope we approach it with the standpoint of what's best for international broadcasting, what makes the most sense, and move forward. So that's where I'm coming from. I think it's important that we notify the various constituencies, not only on the Hill, but throughout America. We all know different entities, be it the Persian Network or RFA or RFE, have groups that have keen and unyielding interests, Cuba Broadcasting, in where they're headed. And people feel very strongly about it. Also, we're in a time where there are many exciting developments going on. You look at what seems to be changes in Burma, but the government actually may be undertaking a real change. We'll keep our fingers crossed, but the current indications are pretty good. On the other hand, governments like Syria and Iran are going the opposite direction, and yet the need is even more to make sure we're being effective and to move in that regard. So that's a long, but I think needed explanation where I'm coming from. The devil is in the details. I'm hopeful that at the end of the day, if when this comes for a final vote, I'll be in a position to vote yes. But I also want to put a marker out that while I don't expect it, there could be a plan where I thought it didn't merit my support, and I wouldn't support it. But I'm approaching from the standpoint good will occur, and that will yield a positive vote.
Thank you so much, Victor, and thank you for all your help in this process. Ann, did you want to say something?
Just simply to second what he's saying, I think
I'd
this
say
has
that.
been I think this has been a very constructive, long, thoughtful, deliberative process, and I think yesterday was an incredible day of people taking a look at all pieces of it, and there's a plan on the table to go forward.
I've spoken to the three grantees who are sitting right there, Brian, Libby, and Steve, and I thank you all for being so much a part of this process and for continuing forward to be part of this process. It's really great. Any questions from anybody else, including, by the way, the grantee heads, if you want? We're all sitting here. Hearing no further questions and no further discussion, I'd like to call the question. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. And I will ask the recording secretary here to check later with Dana Perino and Michael whether they are on the phone and voted yes, so it can be recorded exactly correctly, but I will hold that open for the moment since we're having trouble with the two-way feedback. They were, and I don't know what, yeah.
Yes.
But, all right.
We hope they're on.
But I don't, one way or the other, this is a unanimous, and by the way, they've all been very instrumental to this whole process. Dana is up in New York now, but has been incredibly important in helping us work the Hill hand in glove with Susan, and likewise Michael has been, was at the meeting all day yesterday with Michael Linton as well, and when we hammered this whole thing out, they all made incredibly valuable contributions. Moving on next, we had a very interesting discussion, Andre and others, this morning on things like the jamming that we've had of our broadcast to Iran. And based on me being in this building a couple of weeks ago when we were first discussing it, we drafted a resolution which I'd like the board to consider and like to make, to condemn Iranian interference with the BBG and other international broadcasts. I don't see the need to read the whole thing out because it's in tab 9 of the board book. But let me read that, the important, the parts that come after the whereases. Sorry, Paul, I have to read the whole thing?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, the actual resolution on interference wasn't ready at the time the board book was produced. It's attachment 1 to the draft record of decisions.
Oh, okay. I have it in front of me, so I'm feeling really cool.
Okay.
But I will then read aloud the therefore what we voted on so everybody can know, and you can go back and read the whereases later if you want. Be it resolved that the Broadcasting Board of Governors condemns purposeful interference of satellite communication and calls upon the assembled delegates at the World Radio Communications Conference, which, if you read the whereases, you'll see is meeting soon in Geneva, as well as those in the satellite industry, including the satellite operators and brokers, to repudiate this illegal behavior. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Andre, do you want to say anything, or Dick Lobo?
He's going to report on it a few
I'll
minutes.
report
Yeah.
a little further down the meeting, sir.
But thank you for your working on this. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. I want to thank Ann and the State Department, too, because we had to consult quite a bit with them, because they actually know about this subject, too. Ambassador Verveer has been a very helpful person on this. Victor, you're up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and I think it's appropriate to recognize David Enzer and ask him to say a few words here, but this is to put it properly before the board. This year, 2012, marks the 70th birthday for Voice of America, which certainly has a distinguished legacy of accomplishments and achievements during the past 70 years. It was formed 3 years before I was born, and it has made a major contribution to the provision of news and to, again, areas across the world that have not previously had it. I think it's appropriate that we meet here on the 13th of January, the last working day before January 16th, in which we honor the late Reverend Martin Luther King, Jr., who was not only America's contribution to the curtailment of gross discrimination here within the continental United States, but also was America's contribution, along with Mahatma Gandhi and others, in terms of bringing change to other societies throughout the world in terms of nonviolent change, and what Monday's observances will mean, not only here in the United States, but also throughout the world. And I'm delighted that it was President Reagan who signed the King holiday into law, and that the Congress, on a bipartisan basis, enacted the King holiday back in the 80s. And since then, cities and counties and states across America, by and large, have honored and observed this important day. And I think what he stood for is consistent with what some of the operations of this board and Voice of America stand for in bringing freedom and the right to choose and self-determination, and that people should be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, to use his phrase, and go forward. So I would move, Mr. Chairman, that the board adopt the resolution honoring the 70th anniversary. I'd ask that if there's a second, that David Enzer be recognized to outline some of the events that are being planned starting in February, maybe not exact dates because we don't have them yet, but that the year in 2012, how we will observe the 70th anniversary of that.
I second the motion and call on David to speak. Yes, I know about that.
Thank you very much, Governor Ash, and thank you for proposing this recognition of Voice of America. I think some Americans might be forgiven for having thought when the Cold War ended that somehow Voice of America might be less important. But I think we can all see at this point in 2012 that that simply isn't true. There's been a communications revolution that's global in its scope, that has increased and changed the ways in which humans communicate with each other, has increased the number of different types of platforms upon which Voice of America can communicate with the public. But one thing that has not changed at all, and that is the importance of truthful and unbiased broadcasting. That'll always be important as long as there are human beings on this planet. So with all the things that have gone on, with the Arab Spring, with the things that we talked about Burma earlier, with the incredible tension in some of the other parts of the world that we broadcast to, I just want to thank you for this recognition of our 70th birthday. This place, Voice of America, has never been more relevant than it is today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Michael Meehan emailed me and also sent a message that he wants to vote no on the combined resolutions that we just had, and so will be recorded. And Michael, if you're on the phone, we're all quite happy to hear you. Or are you on the phone?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry that I wanted to vote on 3 motions ago, and I wanted to ask a question because I understood you to say that this is the first of 2 motions that you're offering, and I was waiting to hear the second one.
Oh, my point was that there were a two-pronged strategy that we discussed yesterday. I made them both as one motion because it was Victor and others and myself said that this is actually two prongs of a single strategy. So motion one was to proceed with the consolidation of the grantee entities, and motion and that I'm sorry, there's only one motion. The motion said we proceed with the consolidation of grantee entities, and secondly, proceed with the drafting of legislation to consolidate international broadcasting under one structure with one CEO. And those were voted on, those two parts of that one resolution was voted on as a whole. If you want to register your objection to either of those halves, that certainly should be done, and feel free to do so.
Sure. I apologize I wasn't able to join you for dinner last night, but I was there yesterday and I was on all the calls today. I was hopeful that the two-pronged strategy included all 5 networks and not just the 3.
Well, it does. It does. I'm sorry, Michael. Let me restate, Michael. It does. The first part puts the 3 starts the process of putting the 3 grantees together and see if we can do it. And the second part of the motion takes all 5, all entities involved in international broadcasting, and puts them into one structure under one CEO. It was, as discussed yesterday, and you were very helpful in part of that discussion, that part requires legislation, and so that's the second part of the whole thing, was to draft legislation to consolidate all 5 entities, or all entities, I should say, without putting a number on our entities.
Okay. So just so I understand clearly, the board has the opportunity to come back once the legislation is proposed and worked upon to speak to where it is again?
Correct.
Just the final vote.
Oh, yeah, correct. I mean, what we have done is created various committees, one to help draft the U.S. Broadcasting Innovation Act, if I've got it right, sort of, that Susan is going to be working with some members of Congress.
With Michael.
We're going to need you on that part, and then Michael Linton and Victor Ashe, we're going to be working on languages that define the role of the board and the role of the CEO. Obviously, I think it said that the March meeting, people would come back with a status report. Obviously, before we finish the legislation, let me, not that I need to instruct you on the ways of Capitol Hill, but there will be many amendments to that and many things, and I assume we'll have many chances to vote or revise ourselves what we do.
Okay. Well, it's my hope that I will support the motion moving forward. I do want to have a chance to speak on the record to say that, in the time that I co-chaired the Strategy and Budget Committee with Governor Wimbush, I came absolutely convinced that we need to do it all and not just some. And I hope that my colleagues on the board will continue through to see that we go for a complete across-the-board improvement and not just in segments. And I won't object to stepping it up the way that you laid out, Mr. Chairman, but I do want to state that it is my hope we ultimately get to all 5 entities being streamlined to find those savings and not just leave it piecemeal. So with that, you have my vote.
Thank you, sir. And as you know, since we had lunch about it and all, I not only totally agree with you, but actually came into the meeting yesterday thinking that that should be the primary focus and we should do that first. So, yes, I strongly support what you say, which is this has got to be part of a simultaneous process of streamlining all of U.S. international broadcasting. I don't know if I can do this with Dana now, but if she emails in, we'll do our low-tech thing. Michael, I'm actually going to keep you on the phone if you want, and we can stay with us in this regard. Is that all right?
Terrific. Thank you.
All right. And if I may say, just to make sure I'm correct, that Paul and others doing this meeting should record your vote as yes, and certainly note in the minutes that you strongly favor streamlining and consolidating all 5 elements, and that's an emphasis that you place on this. And I assume you're in favor of honoring VOA's 70th anniversary. Victor, back to you, which is anniversaries of particular BBG language services.
Well, first of all, Mr. Chairman, there's a resolution which is in line with the reception that members of Congress held for the Mandarin and Cantonese services back in December that Jeff Kimmel and others attended, and a resolution which I'd moved the adoption of honoring their 70th birthday or anniversary, which obviously is consistent in being part of VOA with that.
So I second. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right.
Now, the next part is something new, and really, if it were possible for David Enzer and I to speak jointly as Siamese twins, we could, but that's not possible. But certainly, I want him to be participating. We spent most of December 14. It was the day I wasn't at MBN. Going throughout the Cohen Building, going to different services, which were observing different anniversaries. They included the Armenian service, which is celebrating 60 years of excellent service. And when you think about 60 years ago, Armenia was part of the Soviet Union. And there have been quite a few changes in that nation since then. And again, our President Obama, has often highlighted the relationship between the Armenian and American people, and our work there, which apparently reaches over a third of Armenian adults weekly, with over 1.1 hours of original service and 0.4 of an hour of repeated programming, is important to them, as well as providing programs for Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And we went there. What happened was, in each service, we were almost like a tag team in the sense that David started it out, made a few remarks. He, of course, is an internationally known personality, and I'm just a guy from East Tennessee.
ABC News security correspondent.
It was great for the folks who work in the trenches to have him there. And I was honored to be there and be with him. And a number of these services, particularly the Ethiopian service, feasted us for a late afternoon lunch, including some liquid refreshments that caused me to take a taxi home, actually back to the hotel. But anyway,
None of which were put on U.S. government taxpayers' expenses.
all privately volunteered. Let that be clear. But seriously, we did that. We also went to, and we repeated this in numerous places. When we went to, it was the Cantonese service, I believe, or was it Mandarin, where Dick Lobo was present, which also obviously is celebrating 70 years. We went to the Bosnian service, which is celebrating 15 years of service, and obviously that came into being with the dissolution of the former Yugoslavia, and of course that was the unfortunate site of bloody conflict and internal strife in the 90s. It includes a popular half-hour live television show daily, and participates in a number of interactive programming television from other Bosnian stations. And its weekly reach, according to our statistics, is 17% of the Bosnian population. We also went to the Macedonian service, which is celebrating their 10th anniversary of broadcasting in an area that has a very partisan local news environment. And the Balkan service in Macedonian broadcasts supports interethnic tolerance, which is particularly important as reminds us as the King holiday approaches in terms of tolerance, but also democracy and economic reform. We also went on to the Georgian service, which is celebrating 60 years. And of course, this started when Georgia obviously was part of the former Soviet Union and did not enjoy even the slightest bit of freedom. And again, today it is a democracy, but a democracy that, as Governor Molhoff and I know, who's visited Georgia under RFE auspices in 2010, faces internal challenges in terms of the stability of that democracy and its continuity. But it's a broadcast that has been important. We also visited the Portuguese to Africa service that includes the Cape Verde Islands, and Angola, and Sao Tome, and other former Portuguese colonies that are now independent nations. In fact, I was in Cape Verde myself at my own expense, and visited the VOA office, or not office, they don't have an office, Stringer, in Praia there. And again, this is is celebrating 35 years of service. We also went, David Enzer and I, to the Central Africa service, which is celebrating 15 years of broadcasting to the Africa's Great Lakes region, where unfortunately recent history includes a level of genocide and bloody conflict, but is now putting forward programs promoting reconciliation and interethnic harmony, and smart life choices in terms of health practices, and general hygiene and things that are important to basic lifestyles that would lead to a longer life as opposed to a shorter life. We then went on making almost a tour of Africa, except it was in the Cohen building, to the broadcast in ethnic Ormos, which is in Ethiopia, northern Kenya. And this is one of the most populous linguistic groups, I'm told, in Ethiopia. And certainly the Horn of Africa is very important to the strategic foreign policy of the United States, and has been a priority for Secretary Clinton and for President Obama. But also this is an area that has had conflict and has a need for aspiring journalists to learn how to be journalists and to actually carry forward their mission. We then went to an adjacent news service, which services Eritrea and Ethiopia. Eritrea being formerly part of Ethiopia, but not exactly friendly with Ethiopia today, even though they're adjacent nations. Where again, and I'm probably not pronouncing this right, but the Tigrinya service.
Tigrina.
Can you help me out?
Tigrina.
Right. Provides service again to another part of the Horn of Africa, and is celebrating 15 years. So again, it was quite almost a whirlwind tour of important segments. But what I left with was what I think they appreciated us being there, and appreciated a small recognition of what they do. And two, I think the cause for most of these people is almost missionary and religious zealots. And I say that in a favorable way, not negative. In that the pay is not what's important, it's the cause that's important. And they would get to work here in a blizzard if that's what it took, because they truly believe in what they're doing.
Yeah, I want to, Michael has to get on at 3, so I want to.
Okay, and then I wanted to.
Yeah, I'm actually going to pass for the moment on David. You responded to that because that was a really good and full report.
Said it all.
Yeah, it said it all, and it's really important. There's no resolutions that need to be adopted. And Michael's on the phone, and before 3 o'clock, he wanted the honor of presenting the resolutions. If you don't mind, if I can ask the indulgence of the board to change the order of the agenda. And even though we de facto passed this yesterday, I want to do it also in open board meeting and ask Michael Meehan to describe the Internet circumvention issues. Michael, did you hear all that?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
All right, you're on the air.
Thank you. So the Congress last year decided to send the BBG $10 million in funds for Internet circumvention, ways to expand unrestricted access. This came in recognition of all the good work that the IBB staff has done over the years with a much smaller amount of money, about $1.5 million for 7, 8, 9 years. It was one of the most impressive parts when we first all got sworn in and went around the building that we saw in the building, and we all rolled up our sleeves and said we need to get this operation more funds so they can do more work faster. And a culmination of months of efforts turned that into $10 million that the Congress sent to us we spent the last couple of months together with IBB Director Lobo, the grantees, and the IBB staff, going through each of the various proposals to give us the maximum impact of the $10 million, and have come to an agreement of how to spend that $10 million, because the Congress had told us that they wanted us to leverage our work with that work of the State Department and USAID, which is another agency that is also pushing work in this space, and we've been meeting with them to help streamline some of this so we can leverage each other's dollars, because what we really need is hundreds of millions of dollars, not just 10, so we want to use this money wisely. So today I wanted to present a motion where we would, based upon those discussions, I want to propose, on behalf of my co-chair, Dana Farina, who's a co-chair of the Global Internet Freedom Committee, and she's been joining us. She was involved in many of the meetings that we had as well, and I want to thank her for her service on the committee. That we proposed the board reprogram $3 million from the FY11-12 funds from the IBB Technology Services and Innovation Office to go to Radio Free Asia, where they have an excellent Freedom to Connect program that is in its nascent stage, and this money would be used to maximize the programs with vendors that RFA works with, as well as the vendors that IBB work with. So I would be mindful that we need to continue this consultation. The 2012 budget is promising for us, Mr. Chairman, as you know, with another $7.5 million that the Congress has sent for the purpose of Internet circumvention, and the staffs, we're all sitting down next Tuesday to review how to maximize those dollars and get them out the door quickly, because Congress has encouraged us to spend this money quickly. And so with that, I move that we move the $3 million to the RFA. Ask for a second.
Second.
There's a second by Enders. You'll be happy to know, Michael, that there's a picture of you on the big screen as we're broadcasting this. You look younger, healthier, and with a very fancy French tie on.
I'm glad you don't see me at the beach right now.
You're not at the beach. I know you're in Boston, and the only white sand out is actually snow. Discussion of Michael Meehan's motion, please.
I think just a big thank you to he and Dana Farina and all who worked on this to make it happen. It hadn't happened as quickly as Governor Meehan had hoped for, but it is happening, and that's what I think we can take pleasure in. And once the resolution passes, I hope staff will move quickly as possible to make this a reality.
Thank you. And we're hoping for $10 million more. This is all being done, as we said yesterday, through Dick Lobo, who's overseeing whichever process the allocation of new funds is. And as I know, just to put it on the record, Carlos Garcia of Cuba Broadcasting said he has some things in the work, too. So there may be many other things that do it. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. The motion carries. Mary Jean, do you want to give us, please, your I see. Your fiscal report.
I actually
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me let Victor finish.
I was just going to go back. I don't feel right going through the language services without
Okay.
David Ender saying something.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but I appreciate, Victor, you allowed me to get Michael in.
We're right to do it.
Yeah.
Just really to thank you, Governor, for this initiative. It was a great opportunity, good excuse for me to meet more of the folks who work so hard for Voice of America. There'll be many more opportunities to come. I really enjoyed the day, and I think both of us learned a lot. And these people really need and deserve the recognition, the small amount of recognition that we were able to give them that day. These are wonderful teams, and as you say, they would do it for nothing and in the snow if they had to, because there's a real sense of mission in this building. Thank you.
Let me also, if I can, Mr. Chairman, even though it's not exactly on the agenda and it won't take but a minute or two, but also report formally to the board that on December 7th, I visited the Edward Murrow transmission facility in Greenville, North Carolina. And I say Edward Murrow because, unfortunately, the signs have been removed, but and I didn't even know it was the Edward Murrow facility. I knew the facility lists itself as Site A, whatever that is. But actually it was named by President Kennedy, who participated not physically in the dedication ceremony, but by telephone in the 1960s as president. And for some reason, the name Edward R. Murrow, and I'm old enough to actually remember who he was, and went to school with his son Casey, at university, but a very distinguished American who operated in London during World War II, and of course was President Kennedy's choice to head I guess it was USIA in those days. And I'm glad Dick Lobo agrees with me that the name ought to be reestablished. Actually, it never was unestablished.
Yeah, Dick,
it just
did you
sort of
want to say
disappeared.
Well, we have some news in just a minute.
Okay, great. Well, we will not, being good journalists, we'll leave with that
Not giving it
tease
away.
coming up next.
But just to let,
But that's to keep, no, I'm going to get to Mary Jean, yeah.
just to let, I found it fascinating. I flew over from Knoxville. There are 2,700 acres of what's remaining. Actually, there's more land than that, but it's been, or is in the process of being taken over by the Defense Department, or transition, however it's happening. There are about 19 full-time employees and a couple of part-time employees who are very dedicated. The point was made to me, which I think is a valid point. Obviously, they're interested in continuing, and it's no secret there's been discussion in the past about closing the facility. I personally think it would be a mistake to close the only facility, that transmission facility, even though shortwave may have a limited future, in 30 years from now might not be around, but it's around for a while. But the only facility that's under the jurisdiction of the United States of America, and where no foreign government can, through a change in government or governmental policies, close it down or restrict us. For example, in the Philippines, a friendly government doesn't permit RFA to broadcast to China. I think it does permit VOA in some part. But obviously, for whatever reason, their government has adopted a policy. Now, obviously, we would never adopt that policy in the United States. So I think it's important, and I'm only speaking for myself, and the point was made, obviously, vigorously, as you might imagine to me, but I think valid, is that why would we close a facility that we have total control over, being located in the domestic United States, the great state of North Carolina, but it could be in Alaska or California or wherever. I think we need to keep that in mind as we move into the future, and only if the service being provided is totally useless and obsolete would it merit closing. And I'm not even sure you wouldn't not close it, but just transition to something else. But
I think we all agree, right? There's no threat to Greenville.
Yeah, there's no threat to Greenville, so let's make sure that that doesn't come out of this. Let me get to Mary Jean, and I actually have Dana who also wants to speak at some point. So let me move on. Thank you so very much, Victor. Mary Jean?
Actually, I have a fairly brief fiscal report this afternoon. As you're aware, we received $744 million in our operating accounts for fiscal year 12. We are currently working on the program plan that goes to Congress on the 23rd of January. The Internet anti-censorship resolution that you just passed will be incorporated into that. So thank you very much for moving on that. On the fiscal year 13, we are, my staff is crashing on the preparation of budget materials and for the February 6th release. And if you don't have any questions, I will be happy to complete my report.
Thank you very much. I know Dana's on. We will try to get her in a minute. Yes?
No.
Oh.
Go on.
Okay. Dana, if you're on,
Tell her I'm calling her Stella.
Susan is calling your cell, so do it. Dick, your report, you want to go to you next?
Sure. I guess we can get that going. Before I start my report, I wanted to call on our head of TSI, Andra Mendez, who has some important distribution and transmission issues to discuss, and also would like to comment on the Greenville situation.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Governors. I'll try to be brief. Considering some of the momentous decisions that have taken place in this room today, these somewhat seem a little less important, but the show must go on from an operational standpoint. In terms of Tripoli, following up on the successful deployment of our Benghazi transmitter, we are now in the process of bringing one up in Tripoli. Although the Tunisian and Libyan border is still too dangerous for the equipment to cross there, we are actually now boating the equipment in and then trucking it into Tripoli, where we expect it to be on air 10 days after the Tripoli arrival. Moving on to Afghanistan, I just want to let you know that we have finished another tower and foundation in the Lashkar Gah Helmand province, and we expect that to be operational by mid-February, despite the fact that we've been running into some serious security issues where some of our employees, contractors, are being threatened, with harm because they are not Afghani nationals and they want the security to be provided by Afghani nationals. So we're going to continue to monitor that situation very, very carefully. In terms of the situation that we've talked about with the satellite jamming, we are currently experiencing two types of jamming on our satellites, both on the Eutelsat Eurobird 2, where we're seeing continuous activity since December 28th, and we have been able to get some geolocation because of the continuity of the signals, and we've highlighted that that is actually taking place out of Damascus in Syria.
As we said when we were briefed on this earlier, that's an absolutely fascinating piece of news, and I do think that at some point it'll get picked up by others in the media. But the notion that the jamming of let me make this words of one syllable because you were reading it pro forma, of our broadcasts into Iran, that the locus of some of that jamming is from Syria, is something that people should know. Is that simple enough?
It is unprecedented.
Correct. Thank you. Go ahead, Andre.
Absolutely. On the second set of episodes, we have experienced jamming on Arabsat on our C-band transmitter. It started on January 11th and 12th, and it's actually taking place over short bursts during the day. We were, hoping it wouldn't happen again today, but indeed it did at exactly the same time. The jamming comes and goes too fast for geolocation to be possible, but it is affecting a lot of services. I won't go through all of them, but they include services from both MBN and VOA, and it's across a wide spectrum. There are also reports right now that Al Jazeera itself is being jammed on Arabsat, and it appears to be of Iranian origination. So quite a lot of activity.
That's the second most
stratosphere.
interesting piece of news you've given us today.
Yep, a lot of activity in the stratosphere. Moving on, a very brief update on our CMS deployment. We are on full schedule. We have schedules for all of the language services and the entities, and we expect OCB to be coming live on the system in February, and we expect for our transition to be completed as scheduled by the end of September.
Congratulations.
The proof will be in the pudding, but right now we are doing very well, sir. Finally, signage in Greenville, we have a multi-pronged process that is going to make sure that the station is adequately named. We are going to put a proposal in to the local authorities for renaming of the VOA Site B Road to be named the Edward R. Morrow Road, and that will have to go through a public hearing. And we're also, finished with designs for all of the signage that will take place both on the building and on the premises outside. So, Governor Ash, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I think that everybody will be pleased with the end results of that particular effort. And briefly, if I take, it might take just one moment. I left on your sites a report, the annual performance report for the Technology Services Innovation. It's something that we want to establish on an annual basis, and basically is a follow-on to our strategic plan that highlights the progress and the metrics of the progress that we have made over the past year, so that we can abide by the saying that you can't manage anything that you can't measure. So we intend to continue to measure it, and that ends my report. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, this is nice, and let's make sure this is on the website. This should be
Absolutely.
public
Will
as
be
well,
published shortly, sir.
especially the picture of you that makes you look even younger and handsomer than Michael Meehan.
Oh, that's very kind of you, sir. But you know what? Photoshop is a tremendous tool.
I can tell, man. It's amazing. Yeah, big head of hair, everything.
Yeah, those days are gone, sir.
All right, sir. Dick, your charge.
Yeah, it is.
Mr. Chairman, I made a commitment at the last meeting that our staff would begin an intensive study looking at the status of independent contractors at BBG, IBB, DOA, and OCB. We've started that study, and we're looking at the status of all of our contractors in the federal part of the agency. And as we discussed at the board meeting yesterday, we've been requested to bring a full report to the board at our May meeting, which we will do for you for your consideration. I also,
Mr. Lobo, first of all, let me commend you for moving in this direction, and I think the board would be interested to know of something very innovative you did, which is, to my knowledge, apparently I was told hadn't really occurred in the building before, but Tuesday, just 3 days ago, you convened and hosted a brown bag lunch for employees who are contractors to get together, and you opened it up and made some opening remarks, and then other members of your staff stayed to hear, and for, I guess, an hour or so, whatever, 40 or 50 people who were there were able to voice, ask questions, voice concerns, whatever. And I say this is noteworthy because, one, I think it's giving recognition to a lot of people who've been here for a while and who provide valuable service, and while they may be in a different category in terms of employment status, this is their livelihood. Secondly, the fact that the IBB director did it and that you lent your name and presence to it gave it a significance that otherwise it wouldn't have had. So one, I'd like to get a report from you on how you felt it went and the feedback you got from it. And secondly, your thoughts on whether this should continue periodically in the future and where you think it's headed.
Okay. Thank you, Governor. FYI, it is one in a series of brown bag lunches that we're scheduling. The room was filled to the rafters. We had people even sitting on the floor. We couldn't accommodate them. We had probably 80 people at one point in the room. And we had several key staff people here answering each and every question they brought up. I think it was healthy. I think it was productive. We probably couldn't answer everything to their satisfaction, but certainly some of the key issues that we're going to be confronting going forward were brought out, and they had every opportunity to voice as much as they wanted to. And we also, I think, carried it audio-wise or on the web so that other employees could see it. But there was such a response that we're going to have a great many more of these because, as I said, maybe 80 or so of maybe 800 responded. And we also had a survey that we had them fill out, and that was very good for us. We've conducted a census, and we're analyzing it right now. There will also be a series of training sessions for managers and contractors alike, so there can be a better understanding of the payment system and the invoices. All of those things are in the works, but there's a great many fronts that we're approaching right there. So
Yeah, and we will also deal with that in the future board meetings as part of a larger context. Let me move on, if I may, to the VOA Director's Report.
Mr.
David?
Chairman, I hadn't finished on a question on the contractors, which was, I did get some feedback, and is that and I'm sure you heard this, that the payment of contractors in some instances is delayed. That is, it comes in 3 or 4 weeks after it's due. And whatever you can do to speed up that process, because a lot of these people live month to month on their paycheck, that you could do. And I don't say that to add to the meeting, but I did want to say it. And I know you're working on it.
Okay, great, thanks. And David?
Mr. Chairman, Monday morning, 2 days from now, Voice of America will inaugurate Studio 52, which is a new state-of-the-art television studio downstairs. It will start with Afghan Services TV Ashna. This is really bringing us to a new level in terms of television broadcasting at Voice of America. The studio has 3 distinct looks. There's a 16 by 6 foot video wall capable of showing up to 6 video feeds simultaneously. And there's 2 other sets. I can't resist, I'm a TV guy, a little bit of video.
Good luck.
If it works.
Did he give me the Shadow 3? It's going to be a very fast-paced program.
This can be topical. This can be the logo.
In your face, but not your whole chair.
We'll be able to make this a very, very flexible studio.
A open is there, B open is here, right? From here, that's our camera over there.
We think mine. Dark blue.
This is amazing, especially the big screen. That's like our big weapon.
One of the other benefits of Studio 52 is it gives Voice of America employees and television producers an opportunity to see what is possible. Studio 52's opportunities opens up a lot of other doors for producers to try new things that will then give our audiences a better experience on television.
So we're pretty excited about what the new capabilities this is going to give us at Voice of America. As I say, the first broadcasts are Monday. I want to especially thank VOA Associate Director for Operations Mark Prahl and his team for their hard work to make this possible, and invite you governors, if you have time after this meeting, to go downstairs with me and take a look yourselves, kick the tires. A couple of other quick things. On Monday, this past week, DEWA Radio became DEWA Radio and TV with the launch of a new daily one-hour satellite television program aimed at the federally administered tribal area. This program is a simulcast from our one of the radio studios here, and it's on AsiaSat 3, which can be received in Pakistan and Afghanistan. This is what it looks like, very briefly.
تاسو د امریکا غږ ډیوا رادیو اورئ.
زموږ همکار د روخان صاحب سره به دغه پروګرام تاسو سبا 9 بجې د ماښام کې اورئ. او جلیل موږ سره نور څه دي؟
شفاقمند یو ریپورت لرو د خیبر ایجنسي کې د روانو عملیاتو لوجې
چې هر زیارت پر ورځ زموږ د ښځو په حق لونیز پروګرام یو په دې کې موږ
You can see it's just radio on TV, but I'm very excited about the prospects of using this studio that is now equipped to simulcast on television, perhaps to some of the other big radio audiences we have in areas where television is beginning to move in. We don't want to lose these audiences as they move to a different box in the other corner of the room. We want to keep them and engage them. So this is a cheap and cheerful way to do it, but I'm very excited about the potential.
Yeah. Not since Howard Stern and what's his name, Don Imus did it.
Yeah.
Could you tell a little bit more about the expansion of what we're doing to Iran?
We are planning to expand the hours of television, of new television content this coming week from 4 hours to 6 hours, and we have plans for additional hours thereafter. I don't have the list of new programs with me, but there's been a lot of hard work done by the Persian team to develop some new and interesting programs and to get the number of hours of interesting content up. We've also got some creative ideas that are in the works for additional hours that will come in the coming next couple of months. We want to get it back up to 7 hours. There it is. 7 hours a day where it once was, but we want it at a kind of quality that's going to pull people in. Here's a list of a few of the programs. I'm not going to read all of this, but we've got a Streets of Life program examining social issues of daily life in Iran, education, mental health, child rearing. We've got Perspectives with Setareh Derakash, who is returning to our air. One of our most distinguished anchors is back on the air after a spell as a manager. I'm very excited about what she may be able to bring, and you know, Mr. Chairman, that she interviewed you. She'll be interviewing a lot of other interesting newsmakers and personalities in this show.
Just to inoculate myself slightly, I know I got a little bit of criticism for not doing a VOA interview right away. When you do air the VOA interview, I'm sure I'll get some criticism for using VOA as an interview platform, but thank you for trying to balance those two things on my behalf.
Let the record show that we had to chase you, and it wasn't easy to get you.
Ambush.
But I'm excited about the program, and thank you for helping out.
I love those things. I love that team. You know, really high quality thing. In fact, I might ask Enders to speak a bit to the backstory of PNN and the fact that we're now going back up to 7 hours. The American people should be thrilled.
Yeah, well, it's Mr. Chairman. It's really a fairly simple story. We when this board took office, PNN was a major concern to us. We felt that it was not performing to the level that it could. There were lots of good people there and good capabilities, but it needed a bit of a rest. We felt that it had in the past expanded too fast and could not accommodate in the new hours a level of quality that we were looking for. So one of this board's first acts, in fact, may have been the first act that we voted on, was to reduce the number of hours at PNN to give them this breathing space, get David in place, Steve Reddish and his team, and let them let them pull the talent from wherever it was hiding, bring new talent in, and get some absolutely world-class programs on the air, and that's where they're going now.
I have to be candid, sir, that it's a work in progress. There's much more to be done to make VOA Persian what it should be. There's, it's not without difficulties. But I am feeling good that we are beginning to make some headway. We're getting some good programs back on the air, or new programs on this week, and there'll be more to come. I have one more thing, if I could just mention.
Yeah, let David finish.
Which is, I'm also happy to tell you that our weekly television news magazine to Burma is about to be improved. Given what's going on there, we want to have a better and more extensive offering. For starters, we're going to put a fresh daily newscast at the top of that half-hour show, which reruns 4 days a week. And we're looking at some other ideas. Clearly, Burma needs some additional attention from Voice of America and from U.S. International Broadcasting. We're going to try to give it that.
Occasionally, and I know Victor wants to speak, occasionally we get, why did you cut back on shortwave? I just want to quite understood that when we're doing that, we're expanding to these other platforms, especially in Iran, Burma, every other place, because we are trying to be where the audiences are, and we're platform agnostic. In some places it's short, medium wave, long wave, television, internet, but congratulations on being so upfront and in the advance of the game. Victor?
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to add my commendation to David Enzer. I think he's the right man at the right time in a difficult time, and particularly as it relates to PNN. It's just no secret that PNN is a troubled agency that predates you by many, many years, and we all dealt with it during our confirmation process in terms of being educated about it and learning about it. And it's not and there are workplace issues, there are program issues, they're just, you name the issue and it's there. And the important thing is, I think, for people listening in or watching, is that David Enzer is onto this now, but don't expect an overnight cure.
Thanks for separating that.
It isn't going to happen. But on the other hand, he's delegated Steve Reddish to be there 24/7, and he is working closely to monitor it, and he is working for a solution. I say all this just to let people know, because I think all of us get contact to some degree, that management is alert to it. They're not asleep at the switch. They're not ignoring it. They're onto it. They can't solve it in 24 hours or in the next 2 weeks because it's just going to take a long time to deal with it. But because it's going to take a while doesn't mean they're not working on it. And as you said appropriately, it is a work in progress. Now, at some point in time, you may ask what's happened, but I truly believe David Enzer needs to be given the benefit of the doubt to some degree, and give him time to work with it and to work through an incredibly difficult situation. And then at the end of the day, hopefully by the end of this year, we'll see noticeable improvement. It may not be everything everyone wants, but it'll be better than what we have on January 13th.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, David. I mean, we all appreciate you. I just want to say, for those listening, whatever, Dana Perino has been on for the past 2 hours, and we're all getting notes. If you're wondering what notes are these people comparing, it's so that we know, what she feels or whatever, and I'm sorry that we haven't been able to get the audio back on her, but I commend Dana for being so diligent, as she always has been. Will you give the report for the Office of Cuba Broadcasting,
Sure,
please?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carlos Garcia apologizes. He was there earlier but had to catch a flight back to South Florida. His 8-year-old daughter was participating in a soccer tournament at Naples, and he didn't want to miss that, so he apologized, but he asked me...
But let it be shown in the record that he spent the whole morning with us, and we've heard his report, too.
He asked me to comment on a couple of projects down at the Marquise, and I'll try to encapsulate them. The first one, a group of Cuban exiles in Miami recently put together a flotilla and a fireworks demonstration in international waters off the coast of Havana for the holiday season. And Marti had a reporter on one of the vessels, and while they were covering that, they also simultaneously were covering the Cuban government's actions to control the population that were trying to see the fireworks on the waterfront, and they were broadcasting both from the boats, and they had information coming from Cuba on social media platforms, so they gave that a lot of coverage. They also have a series of programs called Avanza Cuba, which means Cuba, Forward Cuba, and these are a series of programs based on the proposition that there are other issues other than the Cuban embargo that they need to talk about with the citizens of Cuba. And recently they had a groundbreaking program where they had small business entrepreneurs from the island connected with small business entrepreneurs in New Jersey and Miami and discussing areas of common interest. That was a breakthrough program for them. Also, he's very proud of this. He called me on this 2 or 3 times last week. On January 6th, Radio and TV Marti gave away 6 electric motorcycles to people in Cuba. They conducted a giveaway, and they invited all the citizens of Cuba to call and contact them so they could participate. They got close to 4,000 people sending in material so they could be involved in this. They had one of these drums, and they put all the names in the drum, and they picked out the winners, and that was done, as I said, on January 6th. It was done live on all of their platforms, on radio, TV, and all social media. It was a wonderful event. They're very happy. Everybody was pleased that it was a huge success, and it was covered by all the local Miami media, both radio and television. So big success for them. The 3 breakthrough things.
What about the T-shirts?
Yeah, he also sent me a picture last week. This Avanza Cuba has a T-shirt that they had made, and they're trying to get them into Cuba along with their thumb drives and all other things. And recently they got a picture taken, I guess, by a mobile phone of a teenager in a public square in Havana wearing this Avanza Cuba Radio Marti T-shirt, which in the past would have been probably something that could have put you in jail. So we gave it to Tish, and I think Tish probably circulated, and so he's very happy about the connection that the Martis are making now with a different, younger audience in Havana, and obviously he's had some good success. And he also, I think, is prepared a 3-minute video that I'd like to show you now.
Greetings from Miami, where the temperatures are cool 72 degrees. That's why I'm wearing a sweater. My name is Rebecca Fernandez, and I'm the first high school intern here at OCB. I'm going to be showing you the exciting new things happening here at the Martis. Come along with me. I'm here with Ofelia Oviedo, the senior producer of Radio Marti, who's going to talk to us about the latest special on Avanza Cuba.
What we did was we tackled the whole aspect of entrepreneurship, small businesses in Cuba, and the government of Cuba recently announced that they're going to allow the development of small businesses and entrepreneurs. As was with the previous Avanza Cuba, what makes this program special is that it's live on television, it's live on radio, and also live on the internet. What we did was we identified 4 Cuban Americans, and we had them speak with 2 entrepreneurs in Cuba, plus independent economists, to talk about the situation of building a business, the resources, and they exchanged ideas as well as developed a kind of a working relationship with people here in the United States.
On the eve of Human Rights Day, a small flotilla sailed to just outside of Cuban waters to launch a fireworks display in solidarity with the Cuban people.
The initiative was called Lights of Liberty, and Radio Marti was live from the scene at every moment. And soon after, we learned via Twitter that in Cuba, people had seen these fireworks. Specifically, Orlando Luis Pardo Lazo and Giovanni Sanchez, 2 very recognized and very well-known independent bloggers in Cuba, they sent messages saying that they had seen these fireworks, and even later they sent pictures. Around this same time, Cuban state security forces surrounded the house where Berta Soler was meeting with other members of the human rights group, the Ladies in White, thus preventing them from viewing and publicly acknowledging the fireworks display off the coast of Cuba.
I'm here with Oscar Rodriguez, director of Radio Marti, who's going to tell us a little bit about the raffle that took place that gave away 6 electric scooters to people inside of Cuba. Tell us a little bit, Oscar.
Thank you. We started this raffle, and we started promoting it on social media, every recorded promos. We also started talking about it. We take our guests, our talent through to the different programs. We had thousands of calls coming through here, the studios. The staff, the producers, the technicians were all running to get the phone call. Overwhelming the amount of reaction we had from the island.
On the main studio, we had the radio talent, and on the other studio behind us, we had the setup for the raffle. A little complicated, but at the end, everything worked out together, and looked pretty good.
So as you can see, this has been a very busy month here at Marti. For the short time that I've been here, I've been able to learn more about the work and the mission that we have here. But before I let you go, I want to show you a little preview of the new high-tech studio and video wall. It's very impressive. Oh well, we're out of time. I guess you'll have to wait till next time. Bye.
Bravo. You know, everybody talked about getting in Cuba. With the flash drives, the way we're doing with satellite TV, whatever, I think we're getting into Cuba far more effectively than we've ever done before. Anders?
Yeah, I just want to underline for anybody who might be watching this how important a role the internet and new social media are starting to play in Cuba. This is not widely understood, particularly here in Washington, and it clearly is starting to take off like crazy.
Oh, definitely on the island. May I go, please, to Steve Korn from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty.
Thank you. I have nothing to add to my written report other than to say that I am going to immediately start recruiting a cute high school intern.
Is there any other particular, I mean, I know your report's great, but is there any particular stories or stuff that you've been working on?
No, I mean, the biggest thing that happened in the last month for us was, we talk about impact a lot, and we have lots of stories of impact. And usually it's our impact on another society or another government. But the big impact story for us was impact upon us by the death of Václav Havel, whose influence on us and whose support of us is instrumental. Frankly, we likely would not have an RFE-RL today were it not for his intercession with President Clinton years ago, nor would we be in Prague without his assistance, and in fact, nor would we be at our new facility at Hagibor without his help as well. And his passing was had a profound effect upon the people of RFE.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen. Thanks for all you're doing.
I'd like to point out, Steve, you may not, or maybe you do know, but our ambassador to Kosovo visited the RFE office this last week, which is the first time that an American ambassador in Kosovo has been to the RFE office, which I think is good for RFE and good for the ambassador.
Yeah, good work for all your team. Radio Free Asia, Libby Lou.
Hello, thank you. There was a death that really rocked our world in the last month also. It was the death of Kim Jong-il. We went to 24/7 emergency staffing and have been covering it in every way, shape, and form possible, mostly focusing on reactions of people inside North Korea, fears and grief and, all kinds of shock, actually, even though we knew that this was going to happen. For some reason, it was a very stunning event and obviously very destabilizing for the region. Thank you for voting for the Freedom to Connect program at RFA. It's going to be phenomenally important in the years to come. You know how censorship and internet blocking has just become unbearable. As Andre talked about, the Iranian satellite jamming, it's just a piece of how these totalitarian regimes are really stepping up their game. I mean, there are 17 million Facebook users in Iran. They can't get to their Facebook accounts. There's, in Azerbaijan, they're now having a rule to register everybody that has a media device. And more close to home, we have been informed in the last, 2 weeks, that Apple Inc. has pulled Radio Free Asia's app for its iPhone off the China market for Tibetan and for Cantonese because it contains, and I quote, illegal content. So, the battle against internet censorship and digital freedom is really important. It's gearing up. It's totally the buzz of the town, and we are right there at the apex of it, and it's going to go a long way. This year has started with a lot of news breaking for us. Our first interview with the very famous church activist Yu Jie upon his arrival in the U.S. Was picked up by the entire earth. You probably got it yesterday in the news releases. But, you know, MSN, AFP, Reuters, South Africa press, German press, Le Monde, I mean, everybody. And this is just the second one in 3 days that we've done. So it's been a big week for 2012 at RFA, and I actually have a video. It's less than 3 minutes long that talks about 2011. So,
Great.
It was a year of protest and pageantry.
A year of electioneering and exploitation.
A year of departure and a year of dissent.
And RFA reporters were on the scene, with groundbreaking coverage of the stories that shaped Asia in 2011.
RFA's Cantonese service delivered an award-winning series that investigated the problem of pollution along the Dong River in the southern Chinese province of Guangdong. The reports looked at how unregulated mining, population growth and rapid economic development have poisoned a river that is still Hong Kong's primary source of drinking water.
An RFA video crew journeyed across North and Southeast Asia to give a human face to the millions of victims of human trafficking. The series examines the entrapment and exploitation behind the global scourge of modern human slavery.
A citizen journalist in Beijing knew that he risked getting beaten up and detained when he set out to cover the plight of China's petitioners, ordinary people who travel to the capital to seek redress for official wrongdoing. Many say they've suffered at the hands of local authorities. After hiding his data card in a bowl of soup, he gave these video images to RFA's Mandarin service.
In March, reporters for the Tibetan service hosted a series of debates among candidates for Tibet's exiled prime minister and parliament. The debates were carried live via satellite to audiences around the world.
Chinese artist Ai Weiwei became a symbol of resistance after the government detained him for nearly 3 months. His secret detention sparked an international outcry.
The communities you serve are changing.
In July, Tibetan spiritual leader the Dalai Lama visited RFA's Washington, D.C. headquarters as part of the broadcaster's 15th anniversary celebrations. He said voices of democracy, rule of law, and free information will bring about a new reality in Tibet.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
And in October, Hanoi-based Yuen Hu Vin became the first journalist to file stories from inside Vietnam for RFA. His courage and the courage of many brave citizen reporters throughout Asia is what keeps RFA on the air.
So just 2 minutes highlighting what we did last year. We also, David, are we're ready to launch a TV program daily in Burmese. And you can see that we have a ton of video from our journalists inside the countries that are just sending us material. So this is all very exciting for 2012.
Wonderful. Questions, thoughts, whatever. Brian, you've had a quiet region for the past year.
Well,
tell us about the Middle East.
Actually, that's a good introduction. Even though it has been an interesting last year, the focus has been on the Pan-Arab channel. And what I want to highlight today is the Iraq channel, Al Hurra Iraq, which often flies under the radar and individually has one of the largest audiences per capita as well as absolute numbers of any broadcaster that we have. I want to highlight it because now that U.S. troops has withdrawn, I believe that that service is needed more than ever as U.S. influence could wane. So I've prepared a short little video which will also run on the air as a proof of performance video in a cut-down version. It summarizes the 7 years it's been on the air, but it also captures the withdrawal of the of U.S. troops in recent months. So we could run that video.
In a media environment that was strictly controlled for decades by the dictator Saddam Hussein, Al-Hurra Iraq was launched in the wake of the Iraq War to provide Iraqi citizens with reliable and unbiased news and information to help serve them in developing a foundation for a democratic society. Now, more than ever, as the society and region continue to evolve, as the future holds so much potential, yet also so much uncertainty, the role of Al-Hurra Iraq is becoming even more vital to the people of Iraq and also to the entire region, as well as to American-Iraqi relations. Since Al-Hurra Iraq is a local indigenous TV channel, the 24/7 programming resonates with viewers by fulfilling a void in their media landscape. Al-Hurra Iraq sponsors election candidate debates, conducts investigative reporting, and presents round-the-clock news, all in the tradition of the free press. The Iraq Today program on Al-Hurra is widely regarded as the newscast of record and is watched by millions nightly. In addition, Al-Hurra Iraq provides access to minorities, women, and youth, access that is not available to them from other broadcasters.
The Iraqi people must know that you will not stand alone.
With the withdrawal of U.S. military troops, and as Iraq prepares to stand on its own as an independent nation responsible for its own security, Al-Hurra Iraq continues to provide the citizens of Iraq with the most reliable sources of information, an essential element to help ensure Iraq's successful transformation is an uncensored press that is free from partisan influences or the pressures from sectarian differences.
So we're partnering to strengthen the institutions upon which Iraq's democracy depends. Free elections, a vibrant press, a strong civil society, an independent judiciary that delivers justice fairly, and transparent institutions that serve all Iraqis.
In this new era, Al-Hurra Iraq will continue to stand out as a constantly reliable and distinctive source of information necessary for democracy to flourish in this dynamic geopolitical environment.
Bravo.
All right. Very good. Nice work, Brian. So that's our report.
Wow, thank you, Brian. Questions, thoughts? Well, let me say that this, I really believe, in Washington, there's an overused phrase, which is this was a historic meeting. But I actually think this was a historic meeting here and a historic process we've done to the Broadcasting Board. I think passage after a year and a half of open discussion of a streamlining program for both the BBG and the entities, and a complete reorganization, we hope, of international broadcasting is great. But what just happened on that screen and the reports from each of our entity heads reinforces why we do that and what we really do. And what we really do is journalism on the ground in places where it really, really matters. I know some of you may think we get bogged down in process questions or motions of this, that, and the other thing. But today, when we looked at that journalism, we're reminded of what's important, and that's what we really do immerse ourselves into, and also the notion of creating an international broadcasting cohesive entity that will last for the 21st century. Thank you all very much. I hear a motion for adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. See you all later.